It's the news no one wanted to hear.
This morning, the Department of Health was advised of 2 positive cases of COVID-19 in Melbourne's northern suburbs. As a result of those tests, a further 2 positive tests amongst those family members have been identified.
Public health authorities now contact tracing across Melbourne's north.
Genomic sequencing is underway, and that should be back either tomorrow or shortly thereafter.
Authorities are worried there could be a missing link between a man who tested positive 2 weeks ago and today's new cases.
After nearly 3 months of no community transmission and a degree of complacency having settled in,
it's a stark reminder vaccination is the only way to a post-COVID normal.
We know that respiratory diseases do circulate more in winter, need to be protected as individuals but also as society, and so please do not wait.
We should never be complacent. The message again, for anyone who's eligible today, please don't delay, just turn up.
South Australia today announcing over 16s in rural areas will be eligible to get the jab from tomorrow.
This is a national first and it's part of our overall rollout to increase that run rate.
Despite promising 2 million weekly Pfizer doses arriving from October, the government continues to cop criticism over the pace of the rollout.
It should be the number one priority of government. Nothing else matters more, to be honest. The sooner the remaining people who have not been vaccinated get vaccinated, the better.
They've got 2 jobs: roll out the vaccine and fix up quarantine. On both of them, they have failed, and they've failed dismally.
Last week was our biggest week, with more than 512,000 doses of the vaccine administered, taking our total now to over 3.6 million doses.
But with the threat of outbreaks looming large, those numbers need to grow fast.
Professor Catherine Bennett is here to talk us through the new developments. Catherine, how concerned should people be about this?
Hi, Waleed. Look, we're always concerned if we have community transmission, but there are a few good signs here. The fact that these 4 cases are known to each other, they are split across a couple of households, but this is one cluster. The concern is how this does potentially relate back to that case who came across from South Australia. And we do have about a 10-day gap between when this first case actually was exposed and developed his infection and when that other gentleman was out in the community back between the 6th and 8th of May. So there's something going on upstream that's going to be just as important for the Health Department to follow up as downstream, but it sounds like they're on it, and that's really reassuring. And the testing from the public's fantastic.
One of the exposure sites is a mega shopping centre where thousands of people would have been at the time. Can contact tracers cope with that en masse like that?
It's always a challenge, Carrie. I think they're doing the right thing. They're going back to see exactly where that person was within the shopping centre, because these mega centres, you can be in the same building but be a kilometre apart, quite literally. So it'll be important to know where they were, if they were sitting in cafes or in other areas where there might have been a few people close together indoors at the same time, and that's where the real risk relates.
Catherine, it seems to me that any way you cut this, whether it's connected to the case from a couple of weeks ago or it's not, there's a mystery there. And we saw that in the case of Sydney, where we never uncovered the mystery. There was a single case, there must have been someone else who had it, and we never found them. So that makes me kind of a bit freaked out, that there must be cases that are just simply not being picked up. At some point, that has to be true, doesn't it? So what are we meant to make of that? Is that a danger?
It's always a danger, Waleed. We know that we have asymptomatic cases, and we also know that not everyone with symptoms gets tested. Particularly as we've had so many days in Victoria without cases, people might not think of COVID now. They might just ignore those cold symptoms. We do know that most people still, even with the new variants, don't pass it on or don't pass it on much. So you can get these links that are quiet in that not many cases emerge from them, but it's enough to keep the virus alive in the community.
That's the thing, Catherine. I think a lot of Victorians might be nervous about will we go into a lockdown or not. There was an article in the paper today about whether lockdowns, actually these little short lockdowns, do anything. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, so far it's been good in the sense that they're there as a safety net, but we haven't had to rely on them. They haven't contributed. They didn't in Queensland, in Western Australia or Victoria because the contact tracing was enough, or the person actually only passed it on to someone already in quarantine in their household. So at the end of the day, it's harder to know exactly when to put a safety net in place, but if you're on top of it, you've got your contact tracing working, particularly if you're going to contacts of contacts, you can get ahead of the virus. then you don't usually need to think about these more drastic, widespread shutdowns. So I think we're looking good in Victoria, and hopefully they'll be confident when they do this 360 search around these cases that they're not missing a whole other branch of an outbreak, and that we're in a position to contain this without relying on those safety nets that, once again, might not need to come into play.
Someone say vaccination? Catherine, thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Waleed.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.